Welcome to the Monday, May 14th, 2018 Council Study Session. My name's Alexander Haig, and I'll be taking over. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's wrong. My name's Tom Van Camp, and while the mayor's away, I will try to stumble through this. We have some presentations on our agenda tonight, and first of all, we have the city budget presentation for fiscal year 2018-19. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. My name is Zach Walker, City Manager. Tonight, in accordance with Section 3.3 of the City Charter, it is my honor to present to you the proposed budget for fiscal year 2018-19. And to begin our presentation tonight, I'd like to look back to February of 2017, when this City Council made bold promises to the citizens of Independence through the adoption of Independence for All. Last year, I recommended a budget that began to make the ambitious vision laid out in this plan a reality by implementing many of the strategies behind the 4 goals identified by the City Council: customer-focused, financially sustainable, growth, and quality. 1 year later, I can enthusiastically report that the strategies behind Independence for All are working. All across our community, there are demonstrated signs of progress. Consider just a few of them. The city has seen a 15% increase in the number of followers to its social media platforms, as well as significant enhancements to the city's primary communication tools, including City 7 and the City Scene newsletter. Working with each department and representatives from all 7 public employee bargaining units, the citywide compensation study is now complete and will be presented to the City Council at an upcoming meeting for final consideration. The city once again collaborated with the Community Services League to provide workforce development training to qualifying Independence residents. Over the past 2 years, this program has provided the necessary skills to help over 50 of our very own residents secure better paying jobs. Substantial increases in funding and personnel were allocated to property maintenance code enforcement. The results are staggering. Over 81% of code enforcement cases are inspected within 5 days or less. We've seen an 88% increase in proactive code enforcement by city staff. Perhaps most impressive of all, we have reduced the timeline for dangerous building demolitions from 120 days to just 40. Citizens are also playing a greater role in helping us address issues of blight in the city, as over 91% of property maintenance cases are being addressed through voluntary compliance. Whether it be one of the many public improvements being contemplated and completed by the city, the rising prosperity of our residents, or the continued growth in residential, commercial, and industrial development, it is evident we are building a better foundation for an even brighter tomorrow for the people of Independence. However, in order to sustain the strong momentum underway, we must address an issue that continues to threaten local governments across our country, and one that I identified in my budget message to the City Council last year when I stated, "I must raise a word of caution. The means by which municipal services have long been funded continue to be eroded dramatically and rapidly. In order to maintain the fiscal health we have worked so hard to establish, we must work collectively to manage our finances and seek new, sustainable funding strategies. In the past, we have weathered economic challenges by delaying capital improvements or making strategic use of one-time revenues. Independence for All drives us to find long-term solutions to end annual uncertainty and stabilize our city finances, not just for the next budget cycle, but for the next generation. Adjusting to this new normal will undoubtedly be the single greatest challenge for the City of Independence, but it is one we are ready to embrace. Moreover, our citizens rightfully expect superior delivery of the basic services provided by the city. Meeting these expectations without growing revenues requires a realignment of our dollars away from legacy programs and redundant services. Recognizing this reality, I began working with my staff this past September to address this very challenge. my team and I focused on an innovative approach to optimize our resources and control long-term costs, provide services that are reliable and sustainable, and identify solutions through collaboration and open communication. Last September, we conducted our second strategic planning session with the City Council to seek directions on what aspects of Independence for All should be emphasized in year 2 of our plan and in the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. The City Council identified 8 priorities listed on the screen. From investing in our highly visible corridors to reducing crime and disorder, the Council has once again set the bar high for the coming year. Using the priorities of Independence for All and the directives of the City Council for the coming year, we set out to begin preparing the budget for your consideration. In all honesty, this could have been a relatively easy budget. Revenues were estimated to fall short by $658,000 from last year, constrained by the same limitations that continue to plague us, while basic spending was forecast to increase by $633,000, primarily due to personnel-related expenditures along with contractually mandated increases. And while I do not mean to make light of the challenges presented by a $1.3 million budget shortfall, this does represent less than 2% of the total general fund budget. But knowing the bold promises made by this City Council and the high standards set by Independence for All, I challenged my staff to identify new spending priorities totaling approximately $2 million. In the past, these may have been considered nice-to-dos and summarily dismissed as unaffordable. But I do not consider things like streets, parks, and public safety as nice-to-dos. As a result, we challenged ourselves to redirect our limited resources to meet basic service priorities to the tune of $3.3 million. I am proud to report tonight that through the determination of our senior leadership and the leadership of this City Council and the ingenuity of our staff at all levels of the organization, I am able to present a budget that meets nearly every single objective we identified when we embarked on this journey last fall. So let's talk about what's in this budget. The budget focuses on improved customer service and communication. I recommend allocating $40,000 to add a position of multimedia coordinator. This position will be funded in part by the Tourism Fund and in part by the General Fund, and will focus on content creation and social media monitoring. As I mentioned, costs will be shared at a rate of 2/3 Tourism Fund and 1/3 General Fund. This will allow the city to bring in-house services that are currently being contracted for, better controlling deadlines and work product to meet the changing needs of the tourism division and citywide promotion efforts. I am also recommending allocation of $55,000 for enhanced video production capabilities. As outlined in the city's communication plan, it is a key goal to increase the content and quality of City 7. Currently, 1.5 FTEs provide required meeting coverage and all other videography and maintenance tasks, leaving little time for special video production projects. This recommendation would provide supplemental aid to increase the content for City 7 and social media for all city departments and programs. In order to meet the City Council's objective of communicating more effectively, Independence for All identifies a strategy of enhancing the city's primary public information tools. As such, I recommend allocating approximately $32,000 for various city communication technology upgrades, including enhancing the functionality and reliability of City 7. To meet the objective of improving customer service, I recommend funding for several strategies. First, I recommend the addition of an emergency response planner to fortify parks, recreation, and tourism emergency sheltering planning and response activities. This position was previously grant funded and housed in the Health Department. I recommend the function and corresponding grant dollars be transferred to Parks, Recreation, Tourism for better coordination and customer service. Second, I recommend allocating $19,000 to provide effective customer service training for our city employees. This funding will allow us to pilot a training program for approximately 100 frontline customer service staff in the first year. This strategy is part of Independence for All and was identified as a priority by the City Council at the strategic planning session in November. Third, I recommend allocating approximately $26,000 to increase training funds for city employees. Further enhancing the knowledge, skills, and abilities of our city employees is vital to ensuring they are equipped with the latest advancements and best practices in their respective fields. And I believe that learning should not end with the completion of one's formal degree or training program. These funds do not come from any city funding, but were acquired through negotiations with city vendors and must be designated exclusively for this purpose. And I compliment our staff for negotiating these dollars. Fourth, as part of our continued commitment to customer service, I recommend an increase to the Independence Ratepayer Assistance Program, or IRAP, for the third consecutive year. I propose increasing this allocation by $30,000, which will ensure year-round coverage for this important program. Finally, I recommend $20,000 be allocated for the purchase and implementation of customer relations management software to provide a more robust and customer-friendly mechanism for our citizens to make and track the status of their city service requests. I want our citizens to be able to pull out their phones, take a picture or text us their needs, track that issue live on their phone, and engage with City Hall at their convenience, at their time. This budget also focuses on ensuring financial sustainability by meeting the City Council's objective of controlling long-term costs and optimizing resources. It is my firm belief that the long-range success of Independence for All is directly tied to financial sustainability. No meaningful progress can be made without this foundation. As such, I have spent a majority of this budget season focusing on this specific outcome in order to build a better financial foundation, and several recommendations are contained herein. I am recommending a series of measures aimed at meeting the City Council strategy of increasing efficiencies to control costs of local government operations. I am recommending restructuring the duties of the health department within our organization. Health inspection functions, including food inspections, lodging establishments, and other commercial businesses, will be transferred to community development, both the dollars and people associated with those duties. I recommend the animal control function, personnel and financial resources, be transferred to police department, where these two functions both work on a 24/7 timeline. And finally, a presentation you'll hear after mine tonight, I recommend transferring our wellness, employee and community wellness function to the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department, better aligning our wellness activities with our wellness resources. Other grant-funded activities will be transitioned to Jackson County, who sits but a stone's throw away from our present health department. Several former health employees also possess the knowledge, skills, and abilities to hold the position of health director, a position currently being held very admirably and very well by our own Mike Jackson. This total realignment will save the city $375,000 in the general fund. Second of all, I recommend outsourcing our copy center functions. These employees are represented by our IBEW Maintenance and Clerical Bargaining Unit, and the work agreement governs their opportunity to relocate to other positions within the organization. This represents a savings of $100,000 to the general fund. Next, I recommend consolidating human resources and technology services into the finance department, creating the finance and administration department, as was previously done as recently as 1995 in our organization. Further, I recommend eliminating 4 positions in the technology service department as a result of our many technology and software upgrades, presenting a $300,000 savings to the general fund in this year's budget. And finally, an action that will be before the council next week for final consideration, I recommend consolidating our 3 utility departments into the Department of Public Utilities and oversaw by Assistant City Manager Mark Randall. This will not only provide financial savings of $300,000 to Independence Power and Light, but will provide greater management oversight, functionality, and accountability across all three utilities. This budget addresses the strategy of providing competitive and sustainable employee pay and benefits, along with advancing the employee wellness program to contain health insurance and workers' compensation costs. The budget also funds the commitments made in previously negotiated work agreements with represented employees. For all other employees, this budget meets the City Council's objective of controlling long-term costs by providing a fair yet sustainable 1% across-the-board wage increase. Last year, as you will recall, I recommended conducting a comprehensive market salary study. Having completing that study, I recommend allocating approximately $120,000 across all city funds, or $111,000 in the general fund, to begin implementation of the study's recommendations, including bringing all employees to the minimum of their proposed new salary ranges. Moving forward, employee compensation recommendations will be based on market analysis, fairness to all employee groups, and long-term evaluation of the city's ability to pay. Though wellness initiatives will play a critical role in curtailing future health insurance and workers' comp costs, the truth is these costs are increasing. The city is faced with an increased workers' compensation premium in the upcoming budget, based on increased losses and increased payments during the 2016-17 fiscal year. Last year, $1.1 million of reserve funding was used in addition to annual premiums to pay for several large claims. This budget recommends allocating $100,000 to begin to offset the workers' compensation fund deficit. I would like to note that the workers' compensation fund has not reached a positive balance since its inception, but has continued to grow the cash and reserves from a negative $7 million budget balance in 2007 to the current $1.6 million negative balance. We're trending in the right direction and will continue to fund this and stabilize this fund. Lastly, based on financial forecasts, I concur with the recommendations made by our Stay Well Committee to make no changes to the health insurance premiums at this time. The committee will continue to review the fund's financial position and make additional recommendations as necessary. Let's also talk about our employee health insurance. Employee health insurance costs also continue to increase, particularly those costs associated with the city's retiree health insurance program. During the course of developing the submitted budget, I engaged the City Council, our city staff, and representatives of the 7 public employee bargaining units in a discussion to identify potential strategies to reduce or contain the long-term costs associated with the city's health insurance program. During these discussions, all stakeholders communicated the same 2 priorities: identify strategies that put the city on better financial footing while minimizing the negative impact to current employees and retirees. Because of these highly productive conversations, I am able to recommend to you 3 changes to the city's health insurance program in this budget. First recommendation is to bring our pre-November 2009 retirees in line with the same premium split paid by all other current employees and retirees, from an 83-17% split to the 80-20 split shared by all other employee groups. This presents a savings of $95,000 to the general fund and a citywide total savings of $135,000. 2, convert our employee retiree health insurance costs to 100% premium. The city presently spends $7 million on retiree health insurance premiums annually. General fund cost share is approximately $4.5 million. In 2017, Employer Health Benefits report of the Kaiser Family Foundation found that only 25% of large employers offer health benefits to retired workers, down from 32% in 2007 and 40% in 1999. This does, however, recommend an important recruiting tool for the city. So, I recommend keeping the retiree health insurance program, but no longer subsidizing costs for new hires after July 1. I will also be forming a committee to explore ways to mitigate the costs on future hires. Lastly, I would like to recommend changes to our dental insurance premiums from the present 80-20% split to 60-40. This represents a savings of $125,000 citywide, or $86,000 in the general fund. To the employee, this represents an impact of $9 per check for an employee on a family plan and $3 a check for an employee on single coverage. This budget also focuses on our financial sustainability by meeting the City Council's objective of improving long-range financial planning. A key component of this strategy has been updating and developing the city's financial policies, including setting a new unrestricted fund balance target of 16% for the general fund. To meet this strategy, I recommend allocating $100,000 to the unrestricted fund balance of the general fund, which will increase our balance from 5% to over 8%, a significant step toward meeting our new target. Many of our sales tax and other special revenue funds already have balances that meet or exceed targets, but it will be critical in the coming years to monitor and, as needed, build fund balance to strengthen the financial health of our organization. And as you can see, we have made substantial increases over the last 3 fiscal years, and as I mentioned, the budget estimates an unassigned fund balance in the general fund of over 8%. A budget is a plan, and it is impossible for me to stand here tonight and present a budget that will account for every single nuance that will occur over the next 12 months. However, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to recognize our true cost of service and budget for these expenses as accurately and honestly as we can with the information at our disposal. This has been a guiding tenet for me in preparing this budget, not only because it is the right thing to do, but because the ever-changing financial realities for municipalities across the nation have forced us to grapple with this reality. It is with great pride, then, that I can report tonight the following message to you and our citizens. You can look at this budget and truthfully answer the question, what am I buying with my taxpayer dollars? To further ensure city finances are stable and sustainable, I recommend addressing several financial commitments in this budget that have historically been underfunded. First, I am recommending a budget that more accurately reflects the true cost of services. I've challenged our department directors to reduce their budgets to be more in line with their historical spending, rather than carrying forward the same appropriations from year to year. The department directors have responded resoundingly. This budget recommends thoughtful reductions to non-personnel operating expenses of over $1.3 million in the general fund when compared to the 2-year average for actual spending. Again, I commend our leaders for their thoughtful considerations. I also recommend allocating $75,000 for the replacement of general city fleet. Many city departments have vehicle needs that have dedicated funding sources to address equipment replacement. However, general fund fleet replacement has dwindled to dangerously low levels for the Community Development Department in particular, including building inspections, property maintenance, code enforcement, and regulated industries. Our general vehicle pool has also suffered. While still not adequate, this funding would address the most critical of needs. I will work with the city's fleet and facilities manager to identify a more strategic replacement program in the coming year. Third, I recommend allocating an additional $42,000 to match the true cost of outside legal counsel services. Traditionally budgeted at $88,000, that amount has never reflected the actual cost of the service. As part of this change, I am working with the law department to ensure a single point of accountability for outside legal services to best assign in-house and outsourced work and manage it our limited funds. Finally, I recommend allocating funding to accurately reflect the true cost of overtime. I recommend allocating approximately $79,000 to increase the overtime budget for park turf and facility maintenance, along with park maintenance, security, and inspections. I also recommend allocating an additional $100,000 to more accurately address the cost of overtime for the fire department. Each of these functions are critical components of the daily operations for the city and have been severely under-budgeted in previous years. We are also focused on ensuring the financial sustainability of our utilities. We're keeping up in this budget with routine maintenance to avoid costly deferred maintenance expenses in the future, and our utility departments have also analyzed the table of organization and have recommended eliminating 4 vacant positions in power and light, 1 vacant position in water, and 1.7 vacant positions in water pollution control. This budget focuses on growth by acting upon the City Council's objective of attracting and retaining quality employers to further all aspects of our agenda. We must raise our median income, we must grow our population, and we must diversify our employment sectors. Achieving this goal is heavily reliant on partnerships with multiple entities and agencies. To meet the strategy of recruiting and retaining businesses, I recommend allocating $10,000 to enhance the city's participation with the Kansas City Area Development Council. As the Kansas City area's only regional economic development organization, the KCADC attracts large corporate investment and well-paying jobs, creating wealth and economic opportunity for the 18-county region they serve. Independents would join more than 300 top corporations and public partners that are passionate KC region supporters. In addition to increasing our strategic partnerships to help attract new employers and jobs, we must also make sure that we have an attractive portfolio of real estate to market. The City Council has been considering speculative industrial development in what is commonly referred to as our Eastgate Business Park. This development could see nearly 750,000 square feet of retail, commercial, or industrial development throughout the 91-acre parcel at full completion. But the initial development will likely require some level of city participation. As such, this budget allocates street sales tax funds to help build the initial access road to the site in accordance with the pre-development agreement authorized by the council in April of 2018. Final authorization to spend this appropriation will still be contingent on the approval of a final development agreement by the City Council. An additional strategy to promote growth is collaborating with the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority to ensure that public transportation connects the Independence workforce to quality jobs. Tonight, I am recommending two measures to enhance transit service and connect riders to jobs. First, I recommend that this budget allocate $127,000 to fully fund the rising cost of providing transit services in order to avoid any service cuts. But more than that, I am recommending this budget allocate $70,000 to add 1 hour of service to all bus routes so that routes will end at our transit center at 7 p.m. instead of 6 p.m., therefore becoming more convenient for our residents. Finally, to meet the strategy of attracting and retaining visitors to the city's historic sites, I recommend allocating $141,000 in the Parks and Recreation Sales Tax Fund for operation and maintenance expenses associated with the new Independence Uptown Market. The largest portion of this new appropriation is the addition of one recreation coordinator position that will be dedicated to programming this new asset for a wide variety of community events, the biweekly farmers market, and many other private rental engagements. The city has demonstrated bold leadership in bringing together the new Uptown Market, and it is imperative that this asset be cared for and utilized in a manner consistent with this investment. Lastly, tonight I want to focus on quality. This budget focuses on improving the visual appearance of our city. I am recommending several activities targeting reducing our blight, improving the visual appearance of major commercial corridors, stabilizing and revitalizing neighborhoods, all while increasing the perception of safety within the community. While the improvements funded from last year have had a significant impact and are recommended to once again be continued in this budget, additional measures are needed to continue the momentum that has been created with this goal. First, I'd like to talk about the many improvements we are making to enhance public infrastructure and the visual appearance of Independence. To achieve the strategy of targeting streets and sidewalk maintenance along major corridors around historic sites, I recommend allocating $221,000 from Community Development Block Grant funding to address street and sidewalk improvements along College Avenue. College Avenue serves as a major through street connecting US 24 Highway and Noland Road just to the north of our Independence Square. City Council provided direction to make this public improvement a priority, and this budget addresses that priority. To achieve the strategies of beautifying major entryways into the city, as well as improving condition of public infrastructure, I recommend allocating $250,000 to address several issues associated with the intersection of Truman Road and Harris Avenue. Severe erosion in this area has compromised the structural integrity of a private building. Recent engineering evaluations indicated that the immediate removal of this building may have an adverse impact on Truman Road and cause the roadway to fail. This budget recommends allocating 50% of the estimated repair costs. It is recommended that MoDOT, though I have no authority over them, fund the other 50% of the cost, as the segment of Truman Road is a state highway. Discussions are ongoing with MoDOT about this. To achieve the strategy of reducing blight in the commercial corridors, entryways, and neighborhoods, I recommend allocating funding for several initiatives. One, $40,000 to further remediate blighted structures and property conditions at the former Rockwood Golf Course acquired by the city last year. Two, $195,000 of CDBG funding, an additional $57,000 of general funding to sustain property maintenance code enforcement abatement, bringing the total amount from both funds for this program to $370,000. Three, $8,000 to further streamline dangerous building demolitions, increasing the total general fund budget for this program to $200,000. Four, $8,500 to address the strategy of cross-training inspectors to conduct both code and zoning enforcement activities by promoting an engineering tech 2 position in community development to a property maintenance officer, therefore giving us 8 up from 6 just 2 years ago. And $2.5 million to make progress in establishing a dedicated tree trimming program that has struggled in recent years, operated by our Independence Power and Light, not only to provide direct customer benefit, but to address aesthetic issues in our community. Last year, the City Council approved reorganizing city staff and creating a regulated industries division. This new division has improved coordination with Property Maintenance Division and has redirected the focus to accountability for businesses rather than simple revenue generation. To enhance the program further, I recommend 2 actions. First, I recommend allocating $55,000 to add a 3rd business license compliance officer to further address the over 6,000 commercial business licenses and 100 liquor licenses overseen by this division. Second, I recommend creating the position of Regulated Industries Manager. Funding for this position will come by reclassifying a currently vacant but funded position in community development, presenting a net savings of $37,000 to the general fund. Finally, this budget sees a resurgence in the resources for the Parks and Recreation sales tax after years of supporting debt service for various projects. As a result, the budget funds an additional park maintenance crew comprised of 3 new staff members, a recreation manager, and several key capital projects, including, get this, $223,000 for playground replacement, $153,000 for park revitalization, and $92,000 to complete various trail sections outlined in the Parks Master Plan. To address the strategy of increasing perceptions of safety in the community, I am recommending a series of actions within the Independence Fire Department that will enhance the capacity of this department at all levels, while presenting a net savings to the general fund of $50,000. One, I recommend eliminating 1 position of deputy fire chief. My staff and I are continuing to look for ways to make the organization more efficient within the existing budget. With the recent promotion of Doug Short to fire chief, the fire department has a vacant deputy chief position. This reorganization would begin by eliminating that position, currently budgeted at $111,000. Next, I recommend adding an administrative assistant 2 position. With the need to increase the supervisory effectiveness for the fire department in the field, I am recommending adding an administrative assistant position for fire operations. This position will handle the administrative duties that are currently handled by the battalion chiefs. This will allow the battalion chiefs to be more active within the field crews they oversee with issues such as communications, statement, equipment, and vehicle inspections. I also recommend reclassing 2 battalion chief positions to assistant chief. Duties that were previously handled by the deputy chief position will then be redistributed. As such, I propose changing the rank for these positions of battalion chief of emergency medical services and battalion chief for prevention to the rank of assistant chief. This reclassification will reflect the actual work being performed by these individuals and the additional responsibilities that will be assigned to these 2 positions. Lastly, I recommend adding 3 fire captain positions. I am making this recommendation in line that they will also be responsible for training and safety to focus half of their shift and will be part of the company staffing during the remainder of their shift. These shift-assigned positions will fill a gap in company levels and department training, as well as assisting with additional staffing needs and help reduce overtime costs. These positions will share expense costs between the general fund and the fire protection sales tax. For all the progress we have achieved thus far, it is imperative that we continue to address the strategy of reducing crime and disorder in our community. We must provide our residents and visitors with the certainty that Independence is a safe community. The most recent citizen satisfaction survey indicated that, with regard to public safety, residents were least satisfied with the investigation of criminal offenses and police presence in their neighborhoods. The public safety services that residents thought were most important to the city in that survey and should be emphasized over the next 2 years were police efforts to reduce crime and disorder, the city's effort to prevent crime, and police presence in their neighborhood. Statistical data supports these perceptions. In 2017, officers in the Police Patrol Division responded to almost 60,000 calls for service and took over 17,000 police reports. Each officer handled, on average, 16.1 calls per 12-hour shift. To address these trends, I am recommending this budget fund a substantial increase in law enforcement activities. This budget recommends a 5% increase to detention housing. This is an increase of $35,000, bringing the total cost to $735,000. The costs for long-term housing continue to rise, and recent changes in state law compound the issue. Although detention personnel will continue to work with our municipal court judges to monitor and try to control our expenditures, this increase is needed in order to avoid releasing more individuals from their sentences prematurely or sending fewer individuals to long-term detention housing. This budget also recommends adding 1 additional detention supervisor at the cost of $55,000. This position will ensure continuity of operations in the detention unit and will satisfy several compliance requirements in state law. The budget also recommends allocation of $12,000 for public defender services for indigent defendants. Failure to provide this service would curtail our municipal court judges' ability to sentence the defendants who are found guilty to jail time. The budget recommends allocating $52,000 to add a full-time police record technician for warrant entry. Due to inadequate staffing, the police department is currently 8 months behind on warrant entries. This appropriation would be offset by the additional revenue generated from additional warrant entry on a more timelier basis. The budget also recommends allocating $10,000 to convert a latent print technician to a police sergeant from a civilian position to a sworn in order to address span of control issues and better address policing needs. The budget recommends $345,000 to add, not to reclassify, not to transfer, to add 5 new police officer positions. By adding 5 police officer positions to the current table of organization, the police department will be able to add a street-level crime unit that will focus on the current top 100 offenders documented by the police department. The unit will also focus on high crime areas by using saturation patrol and surveillance as investigative means. In addition, this new unit will be a force multiplier by working in collaboration with our drug enforcement unit, tactical unit, criminal investigation detectives, K-9 unit, and the career criminal unit on specific investigations to lower crime and disorder within Independence. Finally, this budget fully funds ongoing facility costs associated with the new Independence Communication Center. Costs will be split between the public safety sales tax and fire protection sales tax based on current call volume. The progress demonstrated in the first year of Independence for All is staggering. In just 1 year, our organization has completed over 20% of the strategies identified by the City Council, and we are meeting or exceeding nearly every one of the 60 performance measures used to track our results. Sustaining and increasing this success, however, requires that we allocate our scarce resources to better align with the key priorities of the strategic plan, to pay competitive wages to our employees, to fund basic services. As local governments continue to transition away from the traditional means by which they are funded, it is imperative that we act boldly and decisively to meet these obligations. I am pleased to report to you tonight that my staff and I have prepared a budget for consideration by the City Council that meets each of these objectives. So where do we go from here? This is a budget in transition. It is important that we share our story and allow our citizenry to engage with us. Over the next month, we will be sharing our story in many new ways as well as many traditional ways. We will be seeking public input to help the council make their decisions about this budget during their deliberation process. This will include the official charter-required public budget hearing next Monday night. There is no need to sign up for that. Come and speak. There will be a budget town hall for the community on May 31st at the Presidential Hall of the Truman Memorial Building at 6 p.m. We'll also be sharing our story in your City Scene newsletter and through our social media platforms. I want to thank the City Council. I want to thank the city department directors. I want to thank our city staff for their incredible assistance in preparing this budget. The options prepared as part of this budget are not easy choices, but my staff and I are ready to address any questions regarding the information presented here tonight. Together, we will ensure the long-term financial sustainability of the city while providing the basic services that truly make us an Independence for All. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I talking here? Yeah. Any questions?
Mr. City Manager, are the May 31, I believe you said it was, public hearing, is that going to be televised for people? Could it be televised?
I'll work with city staff to try to make that happen. If assume that it will. If I can't, I will let the council and the community know.
Yeah, because, you know, if I know something's going to be on TV that I can watch, I will plan for it. So the sooner we know if it's going to be televised, the better. And even if it's not televised, could it be taped so that it could be on our webpage?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It really depends on our staff's availability, if scheduling conflicts. But at a minimum, I think that's an attainable goal.
Okay. And I noticed that this budget booklet is different than my prior booklets. Could you explain to the community, first, is this available for them? And second, why does it look so different? What are we missing?
Sure, okay. To your first question, if it's not already been published online, I've spoken with the budget division and that will be forthcoming. It's a matter of getting that document back from the printer, so it's up. To your point about the document looking a little different, first of all, I'm very proud of our graphic design and our presentation. I hope that helps the citizens understand it better. I will mention to you and suggest this to our citizens, read the budget message. There's a lot of narrative there that I went through tonight that should help you understand. There's also an incredibly informative graphic behind that that helps understand where those dollars are coming from and how they're being allocated within the budget. We are in a transition from our old budget software system to the new system that we are moving to. Because of that, the document, it's not being produced in the same software system that it used to. So that's physically why the document looks a lot different. But we've also tried to present the information in a way that's more digestible and more readily understood for the community and city council. Some of the previous pages were cluttered with a series of information and stuff that, in my estimation, didn't really help you as a council or the community understand what was occurring in that budget. So some of those things we have stripped out in order to simplify and really get to the root of, you know, what's being paid for, who's performing the job, what functions are being funded with those dollars. One last point that I would like to make as the community begins to dive into this document, the general fund budget itself has been reduced by $107,000. However, as you compare last year's budget to this year's budget, you may see some significant increases within a department. That's because we dismantled the old non-departmental category that had lump sum costs like retiree health insurance, utilities, some of our contractual memberships, and we assigned those costs to the departments where those costs were being incurred at, primarily to heighten transparency about the true cost of service, as I mentioned in my presentation. So it's not unusual that you might see six-figure increases within a department, but that is due to the transition away from non-departmental to the cost being assigned to those departments.
But I noticed that, like, I can't tell, like, I see big jumps in budgets, but because we don't have a line item, I can't tell, oh, well, this 400,000 used to go to the retirees' health insurance. I understand now
Yes.
why it's up 400.
Sure.
This doesn't break that down. Are we going to get a document that does break it down?
You are, actually. So we, and that's going to look a little different, too, than the line item you're used to seeing. And again, I'm trying to get to meaningful information. So rather than showing $25 for a key to the city, I'm trying to show those true costs, like you're mentioning, retiree health insurance costs, utility costs. So we are preparing that line item supplement. We'll be putting that online and providing physical copies for the council, or if a citizen would like to request that, we can help them with that as well, too.
And are the increases also going to show where the money's coming from? Like, for example, you mentioned the transit. We're kicking up the money to extend the hours, plus we're doing extra stuff for transit. Where's that money coming from? Is this new document going to tell me where it's coming from?
Yeah, that line item I mentioned to you will not. I would encourage the council and the citizens to read that budget message. That's really where the explanation comes in of, we've reallocated, as I mentioned in the presentation, that $1.3 million of getting more in line with our historical spending. So what I mean by that, Councilwoman, maybe we budgeted $100 for rubber bands, but we were only spending $50 every year. We challenged our department directors to say, justify why they might need that $100. And in most cases, they were very receptive to allocating themselves only the $50 they needed. So that's where a big portion of the costs are coming from to help pay for these new priorities. And that's all laid out in that budget message.
In the message I read?
Yes.
Okay, I just missed it then.
Be happy to sit down with you and
Okay,
help walk
thank
through
you
that.
very
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And you bring one point up that I'd like to also say. As I said, this is a budget that's really transitioning away from a lot of old legacy business practices. That's why we're trying to get out in the community engaged. So I would really ask our citizens to participate in this process, to look at this information, call and ask us questions. Call your council member and ask those questions. I really meant that statement of helping our taxpayers understand what their dollars are going for, and we want to make sure we do that.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Zach, for all the hard work, and thank you, Director, City staff, for sitting down and going through this. This is a challenge, for sure. First of all, I want to say thanks for having a public meeting, having a public forum to allow the citizens to come and discuss this. I think this is the first time, well, I know it's the first time that in my career up here that I've seen that, and I think it's very important to let everybody come in and hear what you have to say. Can you kind of describe a little bit of how that format's going to be for that?
Sure. Plan to have the council there that evening. I think most are able to attend. Of course, our department directors as well, or their staff representatives. We're going to do a more truncated version of the presentation you just saw, not because we want to hide anything or evade, but simply for time considerations, because the real point of that meeting is to allow our citizens to provide us feedback, to let us know the things they might like in the budget, the things they might wish they could see as well, but really for us to dialogue with our citizens about their priorities and, as I mentioned, help the council with their deliberations. So we're going to ask our citizens when they come to fill out, just in the interest of time, to try to get as many to participate, fill out an index card with their questions, and then we'll have a moderator who will ask those questions. And those may be fielded better by the council or by myself, or a department director, depending on the nature of the question.
Okay, so very, very casual, very.
Yes, we want this to be very
Informative.
comfortable and open for our citizens to participate.
And very inclusive.
Very
And-
inclusive
and
indeed.
Invite
Thank you.
everybody to come and share your thoughts and questions, and take some of the thoughts even too for next year's budget that we can
Absolutely.
reallocate. Well, a couple things through your message here. One, going to customer service. One of the things that I've heard quite a bit, that we are actually improving on how we provide customer service to contractors, people who want a liquor license, just general inquiries. I think that's highly important, that when people come here, they want to do business and want to build a business, they want to expand a business, that we can go in and we can answer these questions and we can make ourselves accessible. So as much training and putting time into that aspect so we can keep moving forward in progress there is great. I spent some time today in Inglewood and discussing with some of the property owners and stuff there, and share with me a little bit of the hiccups and stuff. But I explained to them, and they understand that we're in the middle of towards the end of a transition with new administration, some different council, that things are looking on an uptrend there, but that is one of our major focuses that we can do. Second, something near and dear to me, blight and removal of unsightly buildings and things. We're looking at budgeting $200,000, and from last year's budget, we were at $90,000 if I remember correctly, so that's quite an increase. And that doesn't count the $195,000 from CDBG funds with that. So we're looking at $395,000 total for possible demolition and removal.
Correct.
So that's a huge increase, which goes to stabilizing our neighborhoods and our corridors. So thank you for that, and thank you, council, for putting that as one of your top priorities to move forward. Big document. Give me a second.
No, you're quite all right.
Flip some papers here. Our street crime unit, I know that you and I have discussed it, and Councilman Doherty and I, we were discussing it, gosh, I don't know, a couple months ago. We were sitting down and looking at some stuff, and I think, don't let me put words in your mouth, but, if we can do all this good stuff and try to make things more nice, if you will, if we don't have the police protection and people have their sense of security there, then everything that we're trying to do with cleaning up our neighborhoods, with removing some of the unsightly buildings and other things that we want to do now and also in the future, doesn't mean anything if they don't feel safe. So thank you for being responsive to that, and thanks to the police chief for being responsive to that. I mean, this is something that is key, and I'm looking forward to it, and the people that I've spoke to just over generalities about stuff. This is going to be something great. In fact, I'm going to a meeting this Thursday, and we're going to talk about some crime issues over there off of River and White Oak in that area. This is something I can go to them and say, hey, we are taking this serious. I mean, this is an important aspect of our budget that we definitely need to look at and have been looking at. Trail connections, trying to connect our different city assets, Truman Library, Square, Inglewood, Fairmont. These type of trail sections that are outlined in the master plan, getting them funded. I mean, this is another dialogue that we've been having with other community people. I was talking to them about this in Inglewood. This is stuff that not only have we talked about over the past year and a half, 18 months or so, we're actually carving this out into the budget. I mean, this is where the steps are taken to put the rubber where it meets the road. So thank you for that, and thank you for the staff for taking a look and being responsive to what we hear as a council. Because what we hear as a council, we give it to Zach, and Zach gives it to you. So thank you very much, and very much so thank you for all your hard work you put into this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm really impressed with the fact that we're going to add some more police officers. This is very important. It's something we've needed for years. With the ones we've already added this year, we've already tremendously upped the number of officers on the street, and hopefully this is just the beginning of what we're able to do in the police department to make our community safer and make people feel better here. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for everything too, but I want to thank you for what we've done. And what this reflects to me is a vision of what we've done to get a budget to go with the future. I think this adapts, it overcomes. It will be constantly changing, and I understand, and next year we'll have another, and every year we go through this, well, you go through this, but thanks here again from all of us.
It's been my pleasure, but I will tell you, I don't know 2 years ago that any of us were particularly excited about getting together for a day-long strategic planning session, but I think we're seeing the value in the council taking the community's feedback through that citizen survey and the council making those things a priority, and that allows us to just point our arrow to the things we know we need to get done. It just becomes a task that City Hall needs to solve, and whether it's public safety or streets or parks, we're checking them off the list.
Not to diminish anybody else's progress, but it's no longer rhetoric, it is actual, and these are the steps you have to take to get there.
Indeed.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, Council.
I would be totally remiss if I didn't bring up College Avenue, for sure, after Councilman Huff and Dory and I walked that. Thank you for listening to that and listening to the group that's out there. I mean, this is an awesome demonstration block that takes us straight to the square, to our new Uptown Market. And this is something that, again, we can show that we're listening and this makes sense. Which brings me to another point here as we're talking about tree trimming, dedicating tree trimming programs, $2.5 million. That's a ton to trim trees. I understand all that. But as we look into the future and we're doing these demonstration blocks or just overhauling a street section, does it make sense as we're doing that if those utilities are not underground to take a look at, is this the time, this is the right time frame to utilize undergrounding the neighborhood, the street, or that aspect, just so maybe 10 years from now we don't have to trim as many trees to get the electricity to the homes?
The answer is yes, and I feel the eyes of PUAB Commissioner Mark McDonald upon my back right now. He has commented often that he would like to see the city continue to coordinate our efforts so that when you replace infrastructure and assets, you're doing it at the same time you're addressing streets and curbs, so you maximize the life cycle of that asset, or those assets, I should say. And I mean, you can't account for the fact if a water main breaks or something, but to the greatest extent possible, yes, it does make sense to try. And that's one of the many reasons I think we're taking this approach with the Department of Public Utilities, is not that these departments haven't been doing that, but to further enhance the communication and dialogue and synchronization between them.
Well, that makes sense. The $221,000 that's allocated, I was thinking we had more allocation funds for that. Was I thinking incorrectly?
That's funding for CDBG. I think we're taking a look at some other resources for some of the other infrastructure projects as well. So I can provide you and the rest of the council with a full cost allocation and what we intend those dollars to buy. But in the budget message, I was highlighting that specifically as a portion of our block grant funding.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Councilman Doherty.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. To pardon off what Councilman Perkins said, you and myself and Councilman Huff, we walked that area last week, and I was just astounded at the amount of citizens that came out to see what we were looking at and why we were there. And the response we got was so good. And the thing that we'll take a small section of just average Independence and be able to go through there and clean that area up and improve that area and just show you what can be done if the public wants to make the big step forward to finance something like that, the difference we're going to make. And we're excited. We're going to do our best. Our council members here do our best to get that done as quick as possible. So a little forewarning, we're ready to roll on this thing, and we're going to see some action out there. We're going to see some improvements and really make believers out of people.
And council member, if I can build upon your point, not only was it the neighbors that came out, but it was the segments of sidewalk that were missing, and we had to keep jumping out of the way because of the high volume of traffic through there. So that wasn't a particularly fun experience for us.
Right.
I can't imagine it is for the neighbors that live there. And just to remind the community, the council's made a priority and the staff's been taking a look at how we can maximize our dollars by targeting our investment in certain areas. So rather than a shotgun approach, targeting these dollars, and that's really where the College Avenue idea was born as a pilot project for that concept.
Good, great, thank you.
I thought it'd be easier to get the last word up here, but. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and next, we have a presentation on New Wellness Division. Mr. Erfurt.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Eric Erfurt, Director, Independence Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Get set here. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about one of the initiatives that Zach was highlighting in his budget presentation, and that's the addition of a new wellness division within Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Tonight, I'd like to highlight a few of the key points relative to this initiative, specifically, how does it fit? Why wellness in Parks and Recreation and Tourism? The new division itself, kind of what will it do, what will it look like, and then a brief budget overview of the new division. So first of all, how does it fit? Well, one thing that I will tell you is this is not a new initiative. Specifically, the National Recreation and Parks Association over the past year has really been promoting across the country adding more wellness programming to Parks and Recreation departments. They have been focusing on a couple of different areas very specifically. One is ensuring that all people have safe access to quality parks and recreation facilities and programs, promoting healthy eating and physical activity standards, expanding access to evidence-based health prevention programs, which is something that our health department was very interested in doing and was doing to some extent, and supporting programs and policies that eliminate health disparities in a community. So when we look at putting this all together for our operation, we find, just as we did when we combined the tourism department into Parks and Recreation, we find synergy. This slide represents all of the divisions, if you will, that will fall under the new department umbrella. They include, of course, the Parks Division, the Recreation Division, the Tourism Division, the New Wellness Division, and we also considered the Silver Sinai Centers Arena one of our divisions as well. The Parks and Recreation Department is in charge of the contract administration over the operating group that is out there taking care of our day-to-day operations out there. So some of the resources that, just to name a few, that we can find easily shared amongst this particular group and in this work setting are administration, staffing can be shared, equipment, of course, and even all the way through our marketing program. I'd like to talk about the resources a little bit more as they apply to programming and facilities. So from a programming standpoint, the Wellness Division will put together the programs much in the same way that the Parks and Recreation Department does now. Currently, a lot of that programming is being done by the Wellness Committee, which is a group of volunteer employees that come together and put those programs together. They'll no longer need to do that because we'll have full-time staff that is focused and based on doing just that for us. The Wellness Committee, however, will still be needed. We don't want them to go away. We would like to transition them into more of a focus group to help us evaluate the program and make sure that we're on track, make sure that we're doing the things that we want to do for both the employee wellness base, but also eventually the community. We will also be making regular presentations to the Stay Well Committee, just as we do the Parks Commission and the Tourism Commission now, to keep them abreast of our progress, our budgetary needs, and our overall operations. And of course, we'll still solicit input directly from the program participants to see if they would like any changes. That's a very important part of what we do in Parks and Recreation already. We're constantly surveying our participants in just our programs and our special events to make sure that we're on track and we're taking care of what our community wants. So another added benefit of officially bringing wellness into Parks, Recreation, and Tourism is that Parks and Recreation already has a wide variety of programs in place. They're already doing wellness. This slide indicates just a couple of those that we have, from Pilates and yoga to bar fusion to camp cardio to the tennis courts, etc. We have quite a bit that Parks and Recreation is already doing. This slide also highlights a few others. There's more than this. These are the ones that came off the top of the list. But suffice to say, we're already doing quite a few activities that fall within that overall wellness arena. We also have quite a few facilities that Parks and Recreation and Tourism already manages, directly or indirectly. A number of those facilities that already do accommodate wellness programming are listed here on the slide. And a few more over on this slide. So again, all of these different facilities are already being used and managed within Parks and Recreation. Many of them already are hosting physical fitness activities, wellness programming, and things of that nature. So again, we're already doing some of the things that we want to be able to do in combination with this new wellness division. So all of those things from facilities and programs can be used to help to support that new wellness division within the department. And the wellness division itself will be coming to us with its own mission and a program base that is already established, which, by the way, matches up in theory with what the master plan for Parks and Recreation calls for, which is to first maintain, second, enhance and expand that which we already have, and when appropriate, build and expand for the future. Hopefully that sounds familiar, because I sure do talk about that a lot. The staff in the Wellness Committee does have a number of great employee wellness opportunities that we want to maintain, obviously. Specifically, we want to continue for the employees, the Sermon Center annual membership and for employees and retirees. We'll still do the municipal challenge events, the lunch and learn sessions, and coordination of health challenges for employees and retirees. And we'll still be doing the employee flu shots under this program as well. In addition, we'll continue to offer the Park Trot 5K, the annual Wellness Expo that we do in conjunction with the Independent School District. We'll continue the community gardening program. Actually, that one is already gaining a lot of support and assistance in growing and being a little bit more efficient and effective with the help of our horticulturalist, who is now on board with that particular program. And of course, we already are working towards a number of different programs in conjunction with the health department, current health department staff, to program that new farmers market. The new farmers market, as Zach indicated, also will be managed under Parks and Recreation. So again, there's some synergy there. In addition to combining the existing health and wellness programs produced by Parks and Recreation and the new Wellness Division, staff is looking to expand the programming as well. The most notable add is a program offered by Cigna called Motivate Me. Staff is still learning a little bit more about that program. It's an incentive-based program to help our employees perhaps make some better choices in their own personal health and wellness, and to incentivize them to take advantage a little bit more about what we're doing. We're learning more about that program. I think it's going to be great. It'll be something that we won't be able to bring into play until after the coming of the new year, but we're pretty excited about the possibilities and potential that that particular program brings to our employee base. In response to recent survey results, we also would like to work together to expand health and wellness opportunities for our residents, both younger and older. And in support of those efforts, staff will be applying for a number of grants like the ones that are currently being offered by the National Recreation and Parks Association. Again, they have a huge initiative that they've been pushing, and there's some grant money out there to be had for these types of things. I would like to point out, it may seem a little bit odd that we are looking within Parks, Recreation, Tourism, and now Wellness to continue the immunization of adults, the immunization audits at daycare facilities around town. But really, we're looking at that program as a basis for something that our residents have called for, and that's more in the way of a holistic, comprehensive program for toddlers in our community. So we can package this existing program up with some of the things that Parks and Recreation is already doing, find some new activities as well to add to that, and again, expand offerings across the board. Staff will, of course, continue to reach out to existing partners as well as new ones to expand the program base, and will encourage a collaborative approach towards improving the health of our residents and employees by incorporating health considerations when developing public and personnel policies. So where will this new division live? The answer is at the Sermon Center. We currently have a personal training space that used to be office space up on the second floor of the Sermon Center. That space we are looking to convert back to office space. The pictures that you see here are of that current space. It's quite nice, and it's already well appointed for turning back into offices. We won't be getting rid of our personal training program, but we will be looking to build a new personal training space in our cardio area, which is also on the second floor of the Sermon Center. So basically just relocating that function. The next question is, where does the funding come from? The answer is that it comes from a variety of different sources, including the general fund. So some of the funding for the wellness manager and some of the Some of the dollars that are associated with that position and operation will come from the general fund. Cigna dollars will also be used for a Cigna on-site wellness coordinator and some operating funds. 2 part-time public health nurses will be covered by existing grants, which are in place. And the emergency preparedness planner will also initially be coming from the grant scenarios that he will carry along with him. Eventually, we're looking to work that particular position into the Parks and Recreation sales tax program. I do have that in the mix and in the numbers for our cash flow analysis and our long-term operations for the sales tax program. We will also be looking at supplementing some funding from the Parks and Recreation sales tax, really relevant to programming. What we're looking at in this particular aspect is an expansion of our community-based programming that we're already doing. We'll be doing more in the way of health and fitness for our community, so it's appropriate to be able to use some of those sales tax dollars for that initiative. So what's next? Well, obviously the first step was to come up with the plan, which we've basically just promoted here to this evening. The second step is, once the plan is approved by the budget, to go ahead and begin implementation, moving folks over, finishing those office spaces off, those types of things. And then really, for the first 6 months, implementing the programs that are already existing, looking at beginning to package some of those programs as well. And then after the first 6 months, we will then be looking at the Motivate Me, and in addition, really taking a hard look at what we have been doing over that past 6 months and planning for the next fiscal year for an expansion of programs even more. So with that said, that is a brief overview of the new division that's coming. We're pretty excited about it. I think most of you may know that this is an initiative that we really have been looking to increase for a number of years, and we're finally able, I think, to really take a good, legitimate stab at it and make a positive impact in our community. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Erfer, are you saying like next year we're still going to have 2 nurses?
Yes. For the first 2 years of this program, we have grant funding that will carry out those.
Okay. After the grant funding ends, are we going to have nurses?
We're going to assess the success of the program to make sure that they're still viable. If they are, then yes, we're going to be reapplying for grants for sure, and looking for other funding sources to keep that going.
If the health department was not closed, would we be doing this?
We would be doing much more in the way of cooperative programming. We're already on that track, but we really needed to take it to the next level. And even to look at it through this particular lens of the health department going away really accelerated that. But I can confidently say we would be doing more in the way of combining efforts.
I see the expansion as health stuff, health department stuff. The nurses, the daycare, the garden.
Well,
did you expand anything that you were already doing?
We will be. So we were already offering some fitness classes, correct? So with the health department coming in, with the staff from the health department coming in, they're coming in with new ideas and initiatives as well that they have in the can that they just haven't been able to produce because of resources, both in staffing and facilities, et cetera. So we're going to be creating new programs that we're offering to the community, but also to our employees.
And are those health department people sitting at the Sermon Center?
Yes.
Where?
Up in the current personal training space that I talked about before.
On the second floor?
On the second floor, yes.
And do they have regular office hours?
They will, yes.
And do they report to you?
They will report to the Wellness Division Manager, who reports to me. So one of the things that makes this manageable is the fact that each of those divisions that I covered earlier, each of those has a division manager. So, and I manage the managers manage those divisions.
And who is, I missed the name, who is the wellness manager?
We are actually interviewing next week for that particular position.
Okay. And is that part of the funding that I see in the budget of $293,000?
Yes.
How much is that manager going to be paid? Do you know? What's the salary range? Let me ask that.
We can provide that information for you.
I believe it's around 60 in salary plus
Yeah.
benefits.
Where's the money coming from?
So that particular portion comes from the general fund.
Okay, for the wellness manager, it's coming from the general fund?
Yes.
And Councilman, if I can expound on Mr. Erfer's point, you asked the question of, would we be doing this? Thank you. I'm going to get lined up with the microphone here. It is on. management philosophy that I've brought and that our senior executive team is trying to utilize, if we weren't doing this, how would we start from scratch? Eric's department has all of the wellness resources. They have the Sermon Center, they have the parks, they have the George Owens, they have the Palmer Center. What this is doing is taking the assets, the people, and the dollars that were in the health department and transferring them to his department, thereby putting the assets together with the people so that he not only just has a treadmill sitting there, but he has somebody to tell you how to make that more dynamic, how to impart that in part of your daily lifestyle, how to help you become more healthy in your daily activities. So to your question, yes, we would be doing this regardless of any other restructuring. In fact, I would argue that that is the very reason why we have done this, whether it's the wellness division with him, the animal control division with police, the food inspections with community development. It's all about where do these assets get maximum value for our community and how can we heighten our responsibility to provide public health services in the community.
I'm just concerned, oh, sorry about that. I'm just concerned, we have the park sales tax, we've got the tourism tax, and they were not passed to pay for health. I don't want the money being mixed up. I've always been very concerned and plus, how much work can this man do? I mean, we are really unloading on him. I am very concerned with work overload. I'm very concerned about the money. I want to make sure the money stays where it's supposed to stay. That is why I'm sort of a little nervous up here hearing about this, and 10 minutes of, don't worry about it, it'll be fine.
I think it goes further than that, and Eric, please
Okay.
go into the details, but as I just said in my presentation, we take seriously our fiduciary responsibility, and we've thought through those very issues you're raising, and we're making sure that we're utilizing our resources in accordance with the funding restrictions and requirements for those. I would argue that we're not putting anything more on Eric's plate. In fact, we're enhancing it, okay? We're putting the people over there to where he can do that. Now, Eric, if you'd like to expound upon that, how it treats you day to day, please do.
Yeah, actually, with the addition of with the recreation manager that Zach had highlighted earlier, I've been without that position since the downturn in 2008. So I've been managing each of the recreation supervisors directly, which there are 4. So essentially, in this upcoming budget, I'm losing 4 direct reports and replacing with 1. So the wellness division coming over, it gives me just 1 more direct report. So from a supervisory standpoint, I'm in much better shape than what I was in the past. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Okay. And if you feel overwhelmed, please tell him. Okay?
Will do.
Councilman Doherty.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't know, I'm not sold on this. I'm almost with Councilmember DeLucy. To me, it's a shell game. We took 2 people out of here and we just moved them over there. We took people over here and we moved them over there. Now, we've got a stay well committee, which perked my ears up. We're giving flu shots out of the park department, tourism department. That's what you said, right?
Yep.
That don't fly with me. That does not fly. I've got a stay well clinic. To me, the clinic ought to give shots. I will not at all tolerate an emergency preparedness planner when we have a department with the police and fire department, and then you said we'll take some of that out of the sales tax money revenue. When we passed that tax, we passed it before we had Waterfall Park. And existing, you remember that, and existing parks are supposed to get a facelift. I've got a park in the 2nd District, it's mowed and that's it. Because all the money was obligated for a waterfall, which we're going to pay off soon. I get it. But if you think I'm going to sit still when you take emergency preparedness planner money out of the sales tax, I'm going to go screaming all the way. Now, I'm not going to fall for a shell game. I'm not going to fall for the Parks Department giving flu shots when I'm paying for a clinic. So I'm going to still have some questions on this because I'm not sold on this one at all.
The plan that we've talked about, in fact, does use the health clinic and their resources to actually administer the flu shots. As a matter of fact, I think we just went over and took a look at that as far as the space situation is concerned. But the public nurses that we have within the Parks and Recreation Tourism mix would still be the ones that would be administering that program for the employees.
Why? When we have a flu shot, can't they be given by the Staywell Committee? Why? Can somebody answer that simple question? Because I think the Staywell Clinic should do that, and not the tourism department.
Or parks.
We're the Parks Department. Let's mow the grass and give you a flu shot.
Part of the budgeted amount for the
Excuse me.
Who are
Deborah
you?
Craig, Human Resources.
Thanks.
Part of the budgeted amount for the flu shots will actually remain intact. And Eric was right. We met over at the Staywell Center, and the flu shots will be administered there through the nurses and also through the Staywell staff, Staywell Health and Wellness Center staff. So they'll actually have two options. Previously or in the past, we've also had two options, both at the Staywell Center, and then the nurses have gone on site through several facilities. And it's my understanding that they still will do that within the city, the nurses who will be in the Parks Department, but there'll also be the flu shots available at the Staywell Center, administered by Staywell Center staff.
Well, that didn't make me feel any better at all.
Councilman Dori, I may just add, and we'll continue to
Sure.
research the concerns of the council, but correct me if I'm wrong, Eric and Deborah, but I think we evaluated some of the cost component to assigning those responsibilities to our on-site Staywell staff, and it was more cost prohibitive to assign that cost to them than to play out the string with the grant dollars we've got and the employees that we've got right there.
An interesting dynamic that we found in the past is actually through the health department, we can get the flu vaccine considerably less expensive than we can through HealthStat, just because those are dollars through the government.
Mm-hmm.
So the cost of the vaccines through the health department and also through the Parks and Recreation Department are significantly lower.
Mhm. So we still have to pay for them. I suggest the doctor's office, Walgreens, CVS, the Jackson County Health Department, maybe. Anyway, that's all I've got to say on it. But I'm not happy with it. I'm not supportive of this budget. Thank you.
If I could also speak to the second, that was the emergency preparedness manager. You know, one of the things that Parks and Recreation and Tourism is responsible for is we are the emergency sheltering component for the city. That can be something as small as a cooling station or a warming station. It could also be something as large as a mega disaster scenario where we're using the arena to intake folks from all over the place. Currently, that is being done in a very fractured and scattered way. It's spread amongst various different folks within Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, including the tourism department. They, in fact, if Highway 70 gets shut down for ice or snow or something of that nature, they're responsible for coordinating some hotel spaces, be it a meeting room, right down to negotiating some discount room rates for people that might be stranded. In addition to that, we have, through those Parks and Recreation sales tax dollars, created a lot of facilities that are very, very active, from the water park to the Independence Athletic Complex. When we have a tournament going on and things of that nature, it is critically important that we have some eyes on the skies. This position would help do just that, so that we know well in advance when something's coming. By the time the lightning detectors goes off at those facilities, oftentimes it's just too darn late. The athletic complex in particular is 168 acres. People are spread out all over the place. The parking's not really close. We need somebody that is going to be diligent in keeping their eyes on the skies for us and letting us know well in advance of approaching weather so that we can alert the tournament organizers, the managers over at the water park, et cetera, so that they can better manage the safety of our patrons. So that's the thought and theory behind that particular position. Again, leading right up to the Mega Disaster Center where we initiate the arena for a mass care type of scenario. Again, right now those functions are all spread across the Parks and Recreation Department personnel. All have a little bit of pieces, but it's not really well coordinated. We're hoping that this position can do just that. In addition, we also do have 2 severe storm weather shelters that we operate. One is at George Owens, one is at McCoy Park. Again, fractioned. We have one person assigned to one person assigned to another, with a little bit of help from Park Patrol. So we're looking to centralize, manage, and coordinate that for the overall better safety of our residents.
That was a lot. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. To go along with that vein, I got 2 points. To go along with what we're discussing, Mr. City Manager, I am confused as all get out. You explained that perfectly to a large degree. I'm confused all get out on what our emergency preparedness really entails. Who does what, We have, I did not know that you were that involved in emergency preparedness. This is new to me, and I guess this is where I fault as a city council person, not knowing how extensive our park and recreation is in emergency preparedness. Is there a way to have a brief study session at some point in time to discuss what our police department, what their role is, what our fire department's role is, and I guess now our park and rec department is, to kind of put those pieces together, so maybe if I'm ever asked somewhere down the line, I can speak a little bit more intelligently about our emergency preparedness.
Right, and yes, we will. I think what you're seeing is we are trying to transition to a more consolidated approach in what's been a very fractured response approach from the city. But I think it would be very informative for the council and the community if we could provide you that information and show you both where we've been, where we're at, and where we're hoping to get to from an emergency preparedness standpoint.
Sure. I just assumed that the shelter McCoy, I thought that was just part of Fire Station 1.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Oh, you surprised too? Good.
Well, Dante, Glenicki. Who's he work for? Glenicki?
Yes, he's part of the fire department. But I think what
Okay, I took my CERT training from him. I thought he was emergency preparedness. I am so confused.
Right. So Dante's, but I think what Eric was talking to you about McCoy Park was the storm shelter that's on site there, which is different than our emergency operations shelter.
And this is different than the emergency preparedness that Eric's going to have?
Yes.
We need a study session.
Correct.
Good call.
Thank you, councilperson.
And second, going back to the previous conversation that we were talking about, did I hear you say that you guys are doing spot check immunizations for healthcare?
That is a
providers?
program that is currently being done by the health department that needs to continue.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. How did that get connected with you?
Again, with the nurses that we were looking to bring over to really expand the overall program base from dietetics for our employees as well as our community to various different educational wellness type of seminars and programs, they are the ones that are also doing those wellness checks. So they're going to continue to do those.
Okay.
But what we also want to do is take that and add to that particular program so that we're doing a little bit more in the way of wellness, holistic wellness opportunities for toddlers, which we have heard about actually with some of our surveys that we've done at the Sermon Center at Toddler Town and things of those natures. They would just want more in the way of toddler programming.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I for one think, the Corporation Inn was well thought out. I mean, we just didn't do this in a vacuum. And the tweaks that we don't understand have been gone over, or that some of us don't understand, or any of us. Think I see it, but what I'm saying is that I know that you've done the job till now, and I feel that it's being addressed, and I just think it's a matter of communication. But after dragging yourself out as under a load, I'm glad to see that you're still uplifted and ready to go on. And,
Absolutely.
And maybe even it is better, is what you're saying.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now, next, we have a staff report on boards and commissions. Madam City Clerk?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem and council members, in front of you, you have a report or memorandum from myself with 2 points of discussion. I was asked to bring this forward tonight for any discussion you all may have and direction to me on how to handle some of these items. First off, we have the city boards and commission appointments that the council interview committee interviews and recommends to full council. As you probably remember, last week we had some discussion during the council meeting about how to handle individual appointments for boards and commissions that the council interview committee is tasked with interviewing and recommending to the full council. And so I guess we're here to kind of discuss that and come up with a new policy or stick to our current policy, and just looking for direction on how to handle that in the future.
Any comments?
Well, I guess my question is, how are we going to do it? I thought we had an interview committee, and it was rotating, and we were gonna do it that way, and then some people didn't want to wait for the interview committee. They would rather barge ahead and do it by adding on a resolution or an ordinance. And I just need to know which way are we going, and what do you guys want to do?
And I would add to that, are we wanting to interview everybody for every committee? I mean, is there a certain, or do we want to stick with committees that are outlined in our city charter, that we interview those people? I mean,
I don't know.
I'm throwing it out for discussion.
We have a process. What you're saying is that what you thought the process was is not being followed.
Right,
So
and
are we going to continue with the process that we haven't been processing to process?
are we going to go with what we had agreed to a couple months ago? I don't know, 6 months ago, something like that, or not? And I
Right,
just,
as I recall, Councilman, you did away with the board, or, and then we brought it back, and then we put it on a rotating basis that never rotated. And we have.
first off, I wish I did have the power to just unilaterally do things up here,
Well, I mean,
but I don't.
You brought it forth, and we got it. What I'm saying is, it seems to me that I would say let it go as it is.
But, and that's my question, what is it? Are we going to have an interview committee, or are we not going to have an interview committee? I just want to know.
Well, the past, what, 2 appointees,
Yes, two.
no interview committee?
No.
Okay. And other boards and stuff, have we had anybody interview?
We did, the council interview committee did meet, gosh, a month and a half ago, with 2 out of the 3 members came and unilaterally recommended, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 people to the Human Relations and the Heritage Commission, which those resolutions were brought forward to the full council and voted on.
Okay, so it is at times done, times not done.
Correct.
Any comments?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was on the committee for a long time with 2 prior members that are no longer on this dais because they didn't seek re-election. And they maybe would have 10 applications. We'd go through them, we'd talk about them, and then 2 out of the 3, you know, we would vote on it, and 2 out of 3 votes would bring them forward. So if we had 1 open position and 10 interviews, only 1 would come forward. We were never given the list of the others. Those 2 members went off. I stayed on there with 2 new members, and we did the same thing. And this council found irritation with it because they didn't like the 1 person that came forward out of the 10 that may have applied. All of a sudden, now they didn't like the process. The board got eliminated. It was determined that everybody could interview anybody they wanted, and we bring it up under council. Nobody liked that one. So they put the board back together. I didn't get to be on it. It was rotating. It hasn't rotated yet. But the thing is, if I have a candidate or I have a citizen calls up and say, hey, I'd like to be on that board, and I tell them, well, fill out a little paper and send it in. Whether or not they get interviewed, I have no control. Maybe they get interviewed, but then they don't come forward for whatever reason. In fairness to me, I think that we should at least have, when we vote on these, the committee's recommendation, which we can or cannot decide to follow by a vote, as well as everyone who applied. Everyone who, so off, if 10 people send an application, I think in all fairness, we should know who all 10 people are. And I should have the right to advocate for the person I thought had good qualifications also. And for whatever reason, the committee may or may not have brought forward. And this was the irritation that got the committee ended the first time, because when the committee brought someone forward, someone up here on the dais had an issue that their candidate didn't get up to be voted on. So the cure was, well, just kill the committee. And then everybody can bring all their people up. Well, there wasn't nothing wrong with that, because whoever has people in their district could bring those interviews up. Y'all can interview them, and we can discuss them and vote on them. Well, that didn't work. So at a bare minimum, in fairness to a citizen who wants a shot, and for some reason that committee doesn't bring them forward, I want the chance to give them a fair play for their money. I want to be able to say, well, there was the 10, there was the one there, Susie Jones or whatever, that applied and for whatever didn't make the cut, and I've got her resume here, and I think it's a good one, and I would like consideration. So out of fairness to all the members, I think we should have a right to bring forward whoever we want. The majority can vote it up or vote it down. And everyone, and when they get the application in, the clerk should notify all members of the applications. You can choose to interview them or not. That's my thoughts on it.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, Council.
refresh my memory, who's on the interview committee right now?
Van Camp, myself, and Dr. Roberson.
Is there a chairperson of that?
We haven't met yet. Because it's a rotating committee. You meet and then you go off. And we haven't met yet.
Who met last time?
I don't know.
The last council review committee was Mayor Weir, Councilmember Doherty, and Councilmember Whiting.
Well, that's been a long time ago.
How long ago?
Yeah, it was about 2 months ago.
Oh,
a month and a half,
more
2
than
months
that,
ago.
probably.
Has it been that?
Oh, it's been longer than that. They killed this committee off way back when. I think it's been longer than that.
Well, we haven't had any appointments until recently. We had someone fall off early spring.
Yeah, right.
And so this committee was reconvened, I think, November,
Well, the big
October
fight was
last
over the
year.
planning commission, is what it was, and that's been a while back. That's where the big fight came in.
If I
That
may,
was last fall, yeah.
are you suggesting that we not have a committee, but the information be available to the council and they decide?
Mayor Pro Tem, it doesn't matter to me whether we have a committee or not. If we want to have a committee, if somebody wants to have a committee, let them have a committee and let them look at it and sort through them, maybe rate them or score them or whatever. But I think all applicants that are current for that consideration should be at least on the council docket that night so we can see who it was. You know, they always tell them, well, we're going to keep it in the file. Well, so they do or they don't, but it tends to be whatever reason they didn't make the cut stood the time of current time, so they never call those back, and some people only reply one time. So if we want to have a committee, I don't have a problem with that. And I think that,
Don't do it.
no, they can have a committee, and I think whoever wants to apply for the committees should be interviewed. They should send the application through to the clerk, and they pass it on to the committee, and if they want to choose and vet them out, that's fine, and give me a recommendation. But I still say, at the end of the day, I want to see everyone who applied for that opening for that committee's name listed. And then if we want to talk about, and if they bring one up and it's voted in, well, that's fine. And if they're not voted in, then we have the option of look at the other 10 that applied or put it back out.
Excuse me, is that information available to the council?
It is. I have it in my office. We have it on our electronic server.
So at any time, any council person can go down there and get that information?
Correct.
All right.
In the current process for the council interview committee, when they make a recommendation, that goes straight to a resolution on the meeting.
Right.
And you don't see anyone else. If we
Right.
were to bring it forward at a study session, I could put on there who the council interview committee recommends, and here's the rest.
We usually don't deal with that on a study session, though, do we?
Well, we do for the other boards and commissions. You'll see who's recommended by that board or commission, and then I ask for direction to add a resolution.
And that's usually on renewals, though.
No, it's for all appointments,
Is it?
reappointments and appointments. Mhm.
But I think when we get an application, there, you know, when you send your email out once a week, you should maybe list or link to whoever's applied, so we all know who's sent in stuff. It's always interesting to know, do we have 10 people apply, or 2 people apply, or 1 person apply? I sometimes wonder, you know, we cast the net out, what did we get back? How many did we get, what kind of interest did we have in that particular position?
And that's what I did before when we didn't have a committee. Everyone got the email.
Right.
Everyone got the applications.
Right, and
All of
that's
that.
fair to everybody. We can all kind of see how it's going, how many people we've got applying. And the other thing is, if it's only one or two, it gives us the chance to talk it up when we talk to people, say, hey, have you, kind of help generate some interest in those positions, so more people would apply, or maybe have better selection or more selection.
I'm more than happy to add all the council members to my emails, to
Sure.
see them on emails to the committee members.
Yeah.
Right.
If that works.
And to the councilman's question, though, what are we going to do? I mean, if this were to be now the function, there's a possibility that we eliminate the committee?
It's whatever the majority wants to do. I'm just looking for direction, because I don't know what we're doing, and I don't know, we can't have it one way one month and a different way the next.
right.
We just need to make a decision and stick with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that decision is.
Right.
Well,
Is to the
excuse me.
majority.
Excuse me. Madam City Clerk, that can't be decided here, can it? I mean, this is a study
more-
session, it can give direction, this is my understanding of the situation.
You can give me an idea of a policy to draft up, and I can more than happy to draft a policy for the council's intentions on how to handle these applications in the future.
Okay. And barring no, are you vehemently against or for anything? Or
No,
are you
I'm not.
for or against? Not, okay, so given
for the
given
majority.
direction,
Well,
given the direction,
Mayor Pro Tem, it was dissolved by council action on an official meeting. That was dissolving it. So either if we want to come up with something now, it's not real binding, because we dissolved it by council action, and then by council action, we put the roving committee together. So by council action, we'd have to either keep the roving committee or disband the roving committee or amend the way the committee does its work.
all right. So
I'm okay with anything as long as I know I would get the resolution that they would recommend a person, and I have all applicants listed. And for some reason, the majority didn't like their recommendation, we would have the applicant's name there, and no one could say, well, I didn't know where they came from. Well, they were listed there because they sent their box top in and their $2 or whatever and filled out the form.
which information has always been available to us?
Yes, but it needs to be made sure that all the members have it, so nobody can say, well, I didn't know anything about this guy or this person. So everyone should know, be aware we have
So
10
you're not-
applicants.
You're not suggesting that she's withholding information?
No, not at all.
It's not available?
It's just not the way it's
It
been
is
done.
available, but you want it in a different form?
Yeah, I'd like to see, I would like to see all the ones mentioned, so we'll know how many we're getting and kind of who it
Well,
is.
Could you set aside some time for Councilman Doherty to come down and?
Always.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
No.
They can email it.
We could, my suggestion would be that if the council interview committee wants to remain intact and make recommendations to the full council, I will bring that information forward to the full council at a study session with the recommendation, along with all of the applications for that committee or commission for review and suggestions and direction to take to the actual council meeting.
But at the council meeting, I want my choice of more than one person.
Well, you would have all of them.
Not at the study session, at the council resolution. It'd be,
Well,
the committee recommends the following people, and then it lists all the rest.
That's what you were suggesting, wasn't it?
She
You'd
did a
like
study.
that on a resolution to say appointing, here's the recommendation,
Well-
and
No,
here,
he wants the information.
okay.
I want it on the resolution. We have a bid for concrete work, and it says Jim Jones was the lowest bidder, but it shows the other 4 bidders that were there too. Staff recommends this bidder. Here's the other 5 that was there.
Gotcha.
That's the format.
Okay.
That's the format
So,
that I would like.
so if we're, does this answer anything? What I hear suggested here is that we keep the committee, but reform the method.
I'm okay with anything that everybody decides.
Well,
Well, if I may,
can't
Ms.
settle that.
Somebody write that down.
Honest to God.
There's a date and time, will you, please?
I don't have an investment. I just think we need to have a policy that we stick with.
And we
I'm
are
with
here
that.
to define the policy and have input. So I would suggest that we give you, do you have ample direction here?
I do, but I just want to make it clear that even with this policy that Councilor Doherty has kind of spelled out for us, each council member still has the individual right to add an applicant at their choosing.
And the information is readily available.
Sure.
at
Well,
all
yes.
times. All right.
Gotcha.
Council,
How long would you keep them? Are they like,
Well, that's the
That's the
second
next
question.
thing,
How
right.
long do we want to keep
are you
applications?
just gonna do it the one time and go with a new one after that, or?
for my 2 cents, we've tried this and it just gets too much paperwork. I mean, you have an overwhelming amount and a backlog for people who we don't know what position they're in at the future. I mean, they could, God forbid, be deceased or any other that we're not keeping up on. And you don't, I mean, it's like the cameras. Cameras are real nice, but you got to have people who monitor the information. I don't see that a long schedule of this would be any, perhaps, I would say at the furthest a year and at the least 6 months.
Mr. Pro Tem, I would defer to our city clerk, who is the great keeper of all records, that, what would your recommendation be? 2 years perhaps, 18 months?
Well, the records retention schedule says probably a year,
Okay,
but I think 2 years, probably the most.
Okay.
Anything after that, circumstances change, people move,
right.
all of that.
Well, you
Okay.
had your chance at a year.
And second, to that point, with this committee, are we wanting to limit this interview committee to those only recognized by the charter? I mean, or you guys, or whoever's on this committee may be having meetings all the time.
And it's more than the charter commissions. There's a couple in there that, there's 7 total that commissions and boards that the CIC would take interest in. So that's kind of, do you want me to name them?
Okay, fair enough.
All others are recommended by other boards.
Okay. Okay, move forward on that, I guess.
So is everyone, is everyone comfortable with 1 or 2 years?
1 year's fine.
One,
Thank you. Next on our agenda here is the follow-up discussion on the reorganization of city boards and commissions. A while back, you should have received a memo from Zach and I regarding some reorganization, and then the mayor did a follow-up memo on her thoughts about the reorganization. So I'd like to get any input from you all. Otherwise, we will probably move forward with staff and Mayor Weir's recommendations. And you should have received a copy of the memos in your seats.
So if I may, Mayor Pro Tem, the Citizen Advisory Committee on Solid Waste will merge with the City Beautification Commission? Is that the suggestion here?
That was staff suggestion. Mayor Weir actually said that she thought that would have been a good one.
Okay.
The Solid Waste Committee to dissolve and combine with the Beautification Commission.
Keeping the same number of members?
Well, that's the tricky part. So
Yeah.
we
good.
do have vacancies on all of these commissions, and I haven't been bringing any names to fill them because I didn't know if we wanted to have a 14-member commission or we just kind of narrow it down through attrition.
14 would be awful low.
Yes.
I would say keep it simple to a 7-member. Is that,
Right, so we could keep it as a 7-member commission, and then if we have like 13 right now, as the terms expire, people fall off, they can reapply when a new vacancy
well, this
comes
could be the
together.
first job for our new interview committee.
I don't think any of those are the 7
Yeah.
boards.
That's correct, none of these are on.
None of those are the 7 boards.
Committee.
Well,
Okay, so
don't-
are we talking about, what are you, you're talking about combining solid waste with beautification?
That was Mayor Weir's, her recommendation.
And solid waste has 6 members, beautification has 5.
Currently, yes.
And did Mayor Weir tell you or tell anybody with the new combined committee how many she wants or,
She didn't give a specific number, no.
or from where? Okay,
Friday's the first I've kind of heard
okay.
this.
Well, at this point, then we'll table it
Yeah, we need Weir.
I agree with that.
and move on. Agreed?
Sure.
I mean, does that answer your?
Yeah, would
Okay.
you want to bring it back at a different study session after some discussions take place?
Late December,
Okay.
late December.
Late December back in, never mind.
Got it. Thank you.
Is that,
That's all I have.
thank you, Madam City Clerk. Any further items council wishes to discuss?
Excuse me. Well, isn't May 21 our solid waste cleanup? And I know it's unusual for a study session, but May 21 is coming very soon. And I do remind everybody, we're doing a second annual cleanup of Independence from 9 to 11 that Monday. Students from the area high schools, Fort Osage and Independence, are doing parks, but the city adults are doing, I believe, 6 separate locations. And if you get onto the Chamber of Commerce website, you can sign up, you can call Ms. Meg Lewis here at the city, she can give you direction. I really encourage everybody to please put some effort into keeping our city beautiful. Thank you very
So what
much.
do you want to discuss about this?
Come out and pick up some trash.
That's disgusting. Oh, no. Are there any items that you would like? Okay. Mr. City Manager, anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Are you sure?
More than.
All right. We're adjourned.